Okay, let's go.
Oh,
Uh, Sorry, I got distracted for a second. Okay, we are live. Thanks everyone for joining this live session. Um, as announced, we have naturally Manuel in the call. Manuel is the CEO of UBench. Naturally, Manuel, you'll do a better presentation of yourself than I would ever do. So I will let you that privilege. I'm, however, always asked and reminded to do a short introduction about who we are at dualoop, because it seems that not everyone knows us. Um, so I'll give you a very short 2 minute introduction on that. So we are a consulting firm, no surprise there. I personally launched a firm a couple of years ago. I'm former operator. The particularity of dualoop is that actually most of our people are former operators, so we're not PowerPoint people, but we're more people of actions. And we work across four lines of services. The first one's probably the one that we're most renowned for is what you call shape, or we do organization design or redesign. So we work with companies that are really facing a shift in paradigm. Mostly work with either pure tech companies, startup scale up, or larger tech companies. And we also work with more service-based organization in any type of industry. Might be go from energy to banking and to insurance. The only things that those customers in common is that they are facing a paradigm shift. Something is changing, either because of an internal event or because of an external event. Sometimes good news, large funding round, and meanings that you need to accelerate and you need support on rethinking the way you operate in order to ensure that you can scale and sustain that acceleration. Sometimes because you need to downscale. Less fun, but it's part of life. But there is also a situation where the market is changing and we have to completely rethink the way you're approaching that. Think about the energy sector. So electrification is going crazy. It's changing completely the market, the dynamics, even the way the grid is operating, and that's where we come. Second pillar is what we could build, where we do the funny part is actually the one the name is mostly badly chosen, and we'll have to work on that. But we don't do any development, but we work with companies to do what we call market research or product discovery. We do that with or for customers. So typically think about every question you may have on your market, on your users, and things that we need to uh, help on, and then we're there and we help you to do the discovery so that at some point you can do it yourself, or you keep on relying it with us on when you have a peak of work. Then we have Empower, where we do individual group coaching and trainings. We have product management training that has already upskill, I think roughly 300 or 400 product managers so far in Europe. The next one will be in October. So if you have any question about that, or if you're a bit curious, check in the comment side. Beatrice, in a couple of minutes, we share the link about the next iteration. And we also do internal in-house training. So if you have any curiosity about that or you need any support, please don't hesitate to reach out. And then staff, probably the most traditional one. We help companies to augment their team by a very talented and capable profile expert in product management, or for different roles, going from product manager, product owners up to CPO and intern. And probably the next element that I should talk about, and that's on the next slide, is on dualoop Coach. We developed our own application to support and react as a sparring partner for product people. So the way you can use that solutions in Donnery is not just a wrap up of an of an LLM. There is a real complex orchestration behind. You can get access thanks to that to our own internal knowledge base, and many additional information that we have fit into a database built up on multiple rack system. But the way it works, that really help any product person to get to get coached and supported, and really have a sparring partner always next to them, whatever the time, so that everyone can keep on developing their practice. It also helps you to rethink, structure things, and help to process large amounts and variety of content. We also actually do that, and because we love dog fooding, we use that solution to speed up and to augment our transformation team. So when we work on an engagement, we actually even create our own and specific knowledge base related to a customer that help us to read, to produce, and to help on the analysis and guide some customers into their transformation, and so that they can also have that supplement and then additional sparring partner in rethinking how to reshape their organization. This tool is actually available online. You can sign up at any point in time. You may not have access to all the different features naturally, and if you want to have a paid license, we're happy to get you 1 month or even more of a paid license so that you can test and try this solution by yourself in exchange of good feedbacks, and so that we can even improve the tool. Thanks to your help. So enough of me talking. I think it's really now time to let Manuel on stage to discuss a bit further about your journey, Manuel. So we worked together some time ago now on helping you to reshape your organization and helping it evolving. I think it's a really nice story, and then I'm always impressed by how things have changed so fast with so much and so little of our help. But enough teasing. I'll let you jump in, and I'll come back in a couple of slides when we'll go to the next phase of our conversation.
Very good. Thanks, Timothy. And I realized it's already like 2 years ago that we met. So and we came indeed quite a long journey since then. Not only from the optics, I realized when I saw that picture, I might need to update my LinkedIn picture, because like 2 years ago, when we met, we were at a very different stage on our organization. So I'm Manuel. I am the CEO of UBench, and I started working with UBench in 2022. So I'm 4 years a bit with the company now, and I came from a very different background. So I was working at corporate that was the investor of UBench back then, and I came through a phase where we made the company ready for sale, and now we have a new investor. That is also why I'm dressed a bit more corporate today, because I'm sitting at the investor's office. And I think a very important prerequisite for that was that we made the organization fit for growth, even beyond it was back then. So when I started in 2022, basically we were like 30-ish people, had like 4 million turnover. Now we roughly doubled that in the last 3 years, and in number of people, we are probably 40, 45 at the moment. So where do we come from, and what are we doing? So we are 20 years in the market. So UBench was founded in 2003, so quite a while ago. We started with a platform business before there was platform businesses available, and the idea was a very visionary back then. So imagine you're having a car accident, and in that car accident, you need to connect a lot of different stakeholders. You have a company car, as many people have in Belgium, and then you have an accident. You need to discuss with your insurance company, your leasing company. You need to know which body shop you are able to do. And all of those different players and stakeholders have different industries to work with, different systems, and they're dependent on each other. So instead of sending emails, or back then even letters and faxes 20 years ago around, we built one platform, hosted it ourselves, and we're making sure that the leasing companies, who are our main stakeholders and customers in the end, are able to follow that process closely, because they are also interested in knowing what is happening with the car, obviously. And over the years, we were able to, generate a lot of data. But what also happened, it's like, because it's enterprise software, and some of you might know the situation. If you are dealing with enterprise clients, they have their own sort of idea how a software is molded into their existing workflows, rather than having an own generic solution that they can just use. So, we are more, and we drifted over the years, because we obviously were in a situation that we are much smaller than our clients, and our clients are Mercedes, BMW, VW, Arval, Athlon, Avons, all the big leasing companies. And they also have slightly different workflows and slightly different ideas how to use the software. And what happened is that over the years we became, rather than a typical SaaS player, rather an extended workbench. So basically we had, let's say, 20 big clients and 20 different solutions of UBench. And we also realized that's not maintainable and that's also not scalable. When I arrived, also from an organizational perspective, we didn't really have a product organization. So there was no CPTO, there was no product manager. And when reviewing that, we decided it makes sense to actually get external help to set up that in a future-proof target operating model. And we indeed chose Dualoop to help us to work with that, with us to establish that. So if you remember Timothy's slide, I think it's mostly about the staff, but also the empowerment and the organizational topic, how to build a future-proof product organization. And this organization then will also build a future-proof product that is scalable. So we had a lot of different clients with like a lot of different ideas, which in the beginning is quite nice. And you want to, as a startup, probably try to get revenue as much as possible from many different sites. So you typically in enterprise don't say no in the beginning. Now what we did is we went firmer and firmer of what you call professional services, which took quite some room of our development team over the years. So we tried to trim that down in favor of a stronger own roadmap. So what's happening, and I think that is like one of my major learnings also, in absence of a strong roadmap, you only get reactive topics on your roadmap from customers. So everything is urgent, everything needs to be done yesterday. Each like blue button or flow here or interface here needs to be done. But you are not in the driver's seat. You really only react on your customers' wishes, and the customers' wishes are top of their heads because they don't have something else to grasp on, because they think, well, if there's no innovation coming from them, then we invent our own ideas basically. So if there's a void of your own product roadmap and your strong product vision, you're getting a lot of reactive requests. And this is what was happening over the time for us. So the challenge was basically we were not really having a strong product vision, and a strong product vision requires a strong product team. So we said we actually need to build the team. So it's an organizational challenge to have that team actually building that strategy to reduce the number of reactive inflows and to make sure that we have our own mid-long-term product strategy that is obviously still very much developed with our clients, so not in our ivory tower with any consultation. But back then what we did is basically we had project managers, and they had very individual and long-standing relationships with the clients, but they had a very, very technical background. So they were typically ex-engineers. And what we missed out back then was the consolidation of the different requests. So if customer one wants to have a red button and customer two wants to have a blue button, we developed a red button and a blue button for two different companies and two different solutions, while we should have had probably a discussion about shouldn't it be a purple button, and then discuss again with the client rather than letting them lead with the solution, like going one step back and coming to the problem statement in the end. So over the years, the custom work went more and more, and the maintainability of that was getting a challenge. So this is where we then in the end started to press the reset button. So what happened is basically, and I think Timothy came then in a situation where we had a relatively fresh product team still, and that team had to find its role in the organization, but also had to understand what can you do with these internal and external expectations. So you need to also understand what works over which period of time, because it's in the end change management. And Timothy provided us a very healthy outside in in which time frame you can also do what.
Mm. Yeah, I think you're still in control of the slide, right?
Yeah.
Well, okay. So maybe as if we take a small break, indeed, I think because there is always a couple of questions people ask us. Say, when do you know it is the right time, and how this kind of journey start? Do you remember the trigger? Because I particularly remember that you send an email on to dualoop info and say, hey, I'm in this situation, like to eventually train some of my people, and then we had a conversation in a call. Right? Do you
Yeah.
remember that?
Yeah, definitely. So I think so Jonas, our CPTO, that was actually forward thinking and say, well, we need to change something in the organization to make sure that also going forward we are able to sustain and grow. And because I'm not software native, so I'm coming from like industry with physical goods, I was like of the opinion that an outside in would certainly help. That somebody that has done that already could help us with like creating that environment. But we didn't really have somebody that is just painting slides. I mean, I had also my um, less than perfect situations with consultants. So in the beginning, I was a bit hesitant, and but then when we met, I think it was very clear that there's a sort of hands-on approach that can help us really. And I think it's also to make sure that the people in the team that in the end need to execute trust the capability of the team and that there is a level of understanding. And I think this is what we were able to establish to have a situation that everybody understands where we want to go to.
Yeah, no, it's. I like the way you phrase it because I think trust and being grounded into the reality of the organization is key because there is as many way of doing product management as there are organization to have a product organization and a product team. So it's important to start from what makes you unique while still also acknowledging that many of the problems that people are facing are similar into many organizations. So it's about finding the good balance, and that's the reason why every engagement with us, when you talk about transformation and the shape track, let's say 99% of them start by what we call the snapshot. So really helping to build a shared representation of the reality. And I remember that you came to me and then asking for a training, and I think that I told you, okay, it's great. You can train people, or you can train them, but if it's not anchored into something where they will know what to do with the new learnings that they will just have acquired, then the impact that you will have is likely marginal. And and that snapshot is the best way, I think, to because we prove and we test it in different format, and it's definitely the one that stick because it helps an honest view, and I think sometimes, and you can testify, sometimes a bit confronting on the on what we will put on the slide and the report, but the journey even has its value because we retreat any organization as a product, and that's why we start by doing a problem framing. And the snapshot is about, okay, let's try to understand what is the problem and ensuring that we have a shared representation of what are those problems. And when I talk about promise, it's a noble word. It's not about just seeing everything, every negative part, but it's always trying to find and understand where you want to go. What are your ambitions? Uh, where are you and how are you organized? And what are the things in your way you do, the way you work, the way you approach things is preventing you to reach your goals. And it's never about making an organization perfect. It's about making an organization that is resilient, they can adapt along the way and will become good enough in order to reach the business goals that you are setting for yourself. And if the goals are ambitious, then your organization will have to also to be shaped in an ambitious way, but it's finding that good balance.
Yeah, and I think confronting is probably the right word because I think in any leadership function, you know that like there's things buried that you might not want to look at because you know that like they need to be solved, but it also doesn't get better if you let them grow. So I think it is a confronting but healthy exercise to do that snapshot. And I think that the way that we did it together with you guys was in a way that we say, well, like obviously there's ambition and like there's the as is and there's to be, and there's a delta, but not in a way that it was sort of, yeah, we did something wrong or so, because I think that was important for the team also to get that message that there is being right for being for in a specific time, and that like changing something for the future doesn't mean that you did something wrong in the past, but you need to, because of external triggers, because of changing markets, because of the environment, change something. And I think that is, I think the differentiation that we were able to get to the team, that because we built that, that means that we are future fit, but that doesn't mean that something is like that we inherently missed out on something for the past.
Yeah. And and to look back to the question how to trigger and how it works. I don't know if you remember, but you were skeptical when I told you, and you'll see that the change will already happen after a couple of interviews, and as soon as it happened, uh, and uh, and I think now you can testify that even throughout the journey, just by going to the organization, is actually creating a momentum where I say now is the time to change, and just by guiding people, asking them some question, challenging them, you start putting them into a mindset that they realize that actually they are empowered to do things better.
Yeah, and I also think that, I mean, it is important to pull people sometimes out of their operational work. To, I mean, it's a different environment, maybe to get some different thoughts also on things. And I firmly believe that, like, indeed these questions help, but then also that like they could talk to each other and share their experiences from these discussions. So I think you need to create a certain um, yeah, threshold that you need to overstep, that like you have enough momentum in the organization to change. So
Yeah,
you need to have enough movement of the people.
yeah. I do remember that we combined that snapshot with the training. Usually, the training is something we do afterward. But I realized backward looking that it was also very useful that it happened in the meantime, because it also helped to people to reflect and come with some more thoughts when we were doing the interviews, and say, okay, but I've seen that in the training it sparked, and it's indeed something we're doing differently. Then they had the time to think about that, and then reflect on what it meant for them, and what are the changes they could see happening into the organization.
Yeah. And I mean, if we look at that slide again and said artifact review, and we're just coming out of a discussion about like building an AI layer on our documentation. And like I had to think back on how our documentation was back then and how it is now. I think it's vastly different. I mean, obviously also with the yeah, with new technologies helps. But I think if you do that snapshot and you're a situation that you're not necessarily super proud of the documentation, that is totally okay, because this is where we've been as well. But you should not bury it and like leave it unattended, because it will be the basis for everything in the future as well. And
Yeah.
it gives you an honest picture, as we discussed before. And I think from that baseline you can only get better.
Yeah, yeah. It's funny what you're saying, because I'm running other snapshot in the same time. So I always say the same: is it's okay if I ask you a document that you don't have, and just be honest, because that's the starting of something. And the fact that you already recognize that there is not there, that might be missing, that's part of the process. And same if it's not complete, it's not it helped, because as you were saying, I think it's always important. Um, you were leading already a successful company. It's not like if you were in a difficult situation, it was going well. The goal was to say, well, you wanted to do better and to accelerate, and that's where you had to shift, but you were already making millions in recurrent revenue, and that's something people should never forget. It's not about just criticizing the past, as you said. It's more about looking where you want to go, and what is the gap that you need to fill in order to reach where you want to go. And that's also something that is really important in the journey when we're accompanying the people, because yes, it's a part that's confronting because we usually talk about the things that could be better, but it's really important to not forget and to not neglect the things that are already good and should stay.
Exactly. Shall
Yeah.
we have a look at how we did that going forward?
Yeah. Uh, yeah, voilà. Speaking about that, I think that was um, something that works very well actually with your team, huh? Is we coming with a first 90 days roadmap. And then I always say to everyone, when we do a shape, a snapshot is a self-contained thing, and then we come with some recommendation. We align and say we start having an agreement on problem, and we start coming with high-level priorities that will move forward. And then you're free to go or continue and get our support on certain things. And then you took an approach on that. It would be great that you explain people what you did with it.
Yeah, and I think I mean big bang is probably the wrong word, but I think we had to really voice within the organization that I mean this is where we are, but it's not the way that we gonna work in the future anymore. And that's again change management internally and externally. Because I mean obviously also client we're used to having I don't know monthly meetings where they say blue button here, red button here, and we said, well, we either don't do that anymore, or in a soft way, like from now on, you will need to pay for that. So, I mean, there was backlash from clients. There was also internal voices that say, well, we can't do that. We've worked always like that. Um, but then, I mean, and we started with small things, and I mean, I'm very very proud that like 2 years after, and it takes a while, but we have now very very proper like quarterly product roadmap meetings. We have a very good pipeline of things that we can also upsell to our clients. So it's a very very different situation. But I mean, in hindsight, obviously 90 days you will not be able to achieve everything what you take yourself as an ambition in these 90 days. But I think it's the direction. And if you run or if you walk or if you crouch, I don't know, it almost doesn't matter as long as you start in the beginning, because you will accelerate. And this is what we are now feeling, that all of the foundation that we built like 2 years ago is in the end leading to like where we are now, where we are able to have a much more modular process, where we have additional features that we can in like a structured way discover. We have much more uh, clearly defined roles, and I realize I mean now reading that again, I mean we had something on paper, but I mean obviously people don't start living it from day one. So we had to grow in an adjusted organization as well, and it was important to put it on paper. And I mean, you will get friction, you will get discussion, and especially if not everything goes well from the very beginning, you will have a situation that there are people saying, "Well, I told you so." But at the same time, if you get that momentum and you see that like you can accelerate in a certain direction, and then you get also positive feedback from your clients and say, "Well, actually, you were right," that gives you and all the whole organization, I think, so much energy that you can just move forward from there. And I think this embedding is much more a continuous process. And sometimes we still pull up the slides from, even though they are now 2 years old or so, and say, well, this is what we did, this is what we didn't do. And I think it wasn't ever the ambition to follow it like line by line necessarily, but directionally and like from an ambition where we want to go. I think that was very important. And I think one doesn't need to take that whole thing super, super literal. And I think that was also not the idea that Timothy gave us back then, but it was very much a you need to change something and you need to be clear on this is the direction. And I think one of the points that I took very, very close to myself is you need to communicate better, and you need to make sure that everybody is very much aware what is his or her role, because especially in a change management situation, things can be interpreted very, very differently. And then if you have second or third hand information, and I think there's this study that says like 80% of what you hear, you like forget the next hour or the next day or so. and repetition here is really, really key. And like it almost feels like hammering it in. And you thought, like my thought was pretty, we talked about that all the time. But like slowly, you see that there's change. And then, I mean, if you're out of the mud, maybe I don't know what's the right translation from German is that you can see that you can accelerate. But like turning in a slow speed, it's not necessarily easy, and you will get backlash in the beginning. But this is why like coaching on a like outside in view here helped us very much. And I think these 90 days also, like after that, the company needs to be able to work from it themselves again, because you also don't want to have consultants for like 2 years project necessarily. So you need to teach the organization to like to sustain or to maintain the ever changing processes themselves.
Mm. Well, I think that's something you did very brilliantly, is engaging all your leadership team from the start into the process, and being very explicit on the pace and how to address it. Because sometimes there's a question on, should you go with pilots or should you do a more massive change? And I think it mostly depends naturally of the size of the organization. But if you are below 500, having your entire leadership team really into it from the beginning is definitely the one thing that will make the most impact. And it doesn't mean that all has to change in a one-off, but it means having everyone thinking about it and being committed from the first day, and all of them defining their roadmap and the initiatives. And naturally, as you say, well, when we build a 90 days roadmap like this, it's indicative, and I think that we can honestly say that this 90 days roadmap turned into a 360-day one. Um, but the direction that you've shaped, and the ownership of the change that we have witnessed in your leadership team is definitely worth being mentioned.
Yeah, and I mean, I think the next slides are sort of the results actually. So indeed, we sort of clearly defined the roles. I mean, everything was like from the start a bit more implicit, and yeah, obviously you know what you do with your title, but there was no clear handover points. There were no clear, well, this is what you do and this is what you don't do towards customer, but also within the organization. I mean, we were building an organization, and back then coming from project managers to having customer success managers, and then who is customer success, what is customer support, what is implementation management. And I think we clearly defined then the roles going forward. And that also took a while, because I mean, still customers reach out to the persons they know, they trust. So it's change on any side, and it's a very human thing to like do what you're used to do here as well. But I think putting like a clear cadence in place, putting clear like make the strategy more visible here as well, not only in our heads, because I think on a C level, you probably think everything is clear, while it might not clear to everybody, because people are missing context, people are missing like information that you have. Because I mean, uh, I have pretty much a 360 view on a company, but at the same time, people that are sitting in their like different jobs, they might have different views on things. And it's important to explain decisions that have been taken, and also the what's in for me. So it's really, I mean, also a change management role that you're having in this whole transformation. And I think this is where consistency creates truth, and where you are able to let your employees speak, but at the same time also make sure that you have a certain cadence where you can put in pieces of information bit after bit.
Yeah. And maybe one element that we should highlight is this kind of transformation, where we do this kind of snapshot. Even though the trigger was the product organization, it never touched only that. I think you can testify that it's a company reset, and it's not only about changing the product functions, it's about changing the support team, the marketing, the sales, and how how the company is running and how the different roles are balanced. And that's definitely something that you took over, and then you led, but it's never only about the product team, because the product team alone cannot drive the change of an organization.
Exactly, and I think it's very much about ownership and taking this ownership. And I think this materially changed over like pre and post the project. And I sometimes still get the hint from the product managers that have been trained in your training, then say, well, don't think in solutions, but go back to the problem. And sometimes it's a bit annoying, and sometimes it's a bit like, yeah, but it's so obvious. But it's very much engraved now in the product team, and they are sort of a multiplier of that thought. And I think it helped us a lot to stop stop doing things that we shouldn't have done in the first place. So I think that is a very healthy, like, circling back on, like, is that really what you want to do? And I mean, again, both internal and external, there was initially some resistance because it's a change, but going forward, I think it's exactly what we need to do.
Excellent. And maybe to close, before we take the question of how the community the start coming in, what would you be your recommendation to anyone willing to go into that journey, or considering leading going through a transformation?
Yeah, and I think what we it's more than 1 year actually. It's like it's crazy how time flies here, but it's like it's continuously improving on the things that you need to take onto that journey. And I think the word that you made that you named before, like this confronting, this is the one that is stopping you, because deep inside, and I don't want to be too philosophical, so you probably know that in your organization there might be some things that are not going exactly the way they should go, but just take the courage and, like, discuss it openly. Because for me it was like, yeah, I should have done this, and I should have done this, and I should have done this. But at the same time, as Timothy said, well, we were, and we, at that point, a successful company. And if I would have time allocated in this field, I might have missed out on some other things. So it's just to, yeah, be honest to yourself and say, well, like, we did what we could do until now, but let's see what is still missing to, like, going even further. And yeah, so it's gaps to go there that you can fill. And it's like, it might be people, it might be resources, it might be processes. But for us it was mostly the mindset, and like not knowing how to work differently. So it's really like, this is what you can do differently, and getting challenged on the status quo, that is very, very helpful. Because I think mindset is much more important than skill set, because skills you can typically train, but the mindset of being willing to change, and I'm very happy and proud of the team that they went with us on that journey here, because you can't change everything alone. You really need to have people that are willing to change something together with you. And in the end, the capabilities can be done in trainings, or you hire additional people that having these skills and then share them. But skills are always they can be tested.
Yeah, I usually phrase it as stating that the first step is create the space for change, and uh, and that's why sometimes people hate when we say that, but the transformation is top down. I mean, it's the C level of an organization that create that space. Is the only one that can create that space for change, and create. Yes, we can dare to change, and we will show the way, and we'll create the opportunity and the room for those discussion and for those moments of exchange to happen. Because I think that we should not neglect, and probably you can testify on that, that it brings additional pressure on the organization, particularly because well, you run a company that's already making revenue, making millions, and you still need to keep on the existing pace, and then you ask your team on top of that to think about doing things differently while working a certain setup. So you need to inspire, drive them, but create also that momentum, so that they can allow themselves that space in order to think about that change and drive it afterward.
Yeah, it's really giving the room and encouraging for like having the space to openly discuss things and not only digging in your own operational trenches in the end.
Mm. Would you have things or hacks or way that you identify that actually worked well in order to inspire your team and to drive them into that change?
I think you need to give room, and I think you need to be able to pull them out of the operational topics. I mean, what we found in the beginning was like we are too busy to change. And I think that is always a very bad excuse because being too busy is basically setting priorities. So I think it's helpful to, I mean, get together another place, having like the room to very openly in a trustful environment share. And I mean that these interviews were also helpful to get a baseline where we are, right? To see, well, this is where we are at the moment, and there's a lot of good ideas also in the organization, so we just need to give them room to like voice them, and then obviously calibrate them and like bring them again in a distilled form to the whole of the organization. But I think it's important to um, have the time to reflect with the stakeholders that have the mindset to change, and then define a target and work towards the target. And I listened to a podcast with a Google CEO, I think, recently, who said, well, the cost of not taking a decision is much higher than the cost of taking a less than perfect decision. So I think executing a decision that you made then, and don't necessarily overanalyze and like trying to get the 120% perfect result, is also part of the recipe that worked for us. Because I mean, now in hindsight it looks all very clear, but 2 years ago, I mean, we were very uncertain whether that is exactly the right journey or whether we should go somewhere slightly different.
Hmm. I think there are two things I remember that that were probably some moment for your team. There's one where you open up yourself and saying, "Hey, these are things that I know I'm not doing well, and these are the parts where I know that I'm responsible for certain things, and this is my contribution. This is what I will do to address them." And that was the first one, and the second one is where I remember it at some point where we were doing those strategic retreats where we say, "Hey, this is your responsibility now, and yes, you need to improve, but i I can have an opinion, but I don't want to have one because this is your space. So I'll help you, but you take the lead." Uh,
Yeah, no, I think that's a very valid observation, and I mean, I think it also depends on the personality types of your management team or the overall organization. I mean, for us, there was also the additional complication that, I mean, I came with a German culture, and then there was Belgian culture, and we were mixing a bit on different topics, but it also made us stronger. So I think diversity in that regard is very, very important, and I tried to, like, there's this one audiobook that said, well, you have two ears but one mouth, so listen more than you actually talk. And I think that was very, very helpful to say, well, I should own, but I should not like take the room necessarily, because you need to have ownership also in the whole organization. And I think that was very, very important, that the people didn't feel that like they were told, but they really genuinely saw that this change can lead to something bigger.
yeah. Excellent. I think it's now time to take a bit of the different question that came in. I think Beatrice, you will. Okay, Finian, thanks for listening this. You're welcome, Finian. Our pleasure. Regarding focus reset, how broad do you go in terms of aligned strategic priorities and then challenging the business goals, remain on product function, or how product ties into those?
I think structure follows strategy, right? So, I mean, depending on what's your business plan, and how confident are you with that. If that is already solid, then you have half of the thing. Then it's not like where to go, but how to go there.
Right.
I mean, I would always start with like, are your business goals ambitious enough? But I mean, we got that typically from our investors. So they basically say, well, now, can you achieve 10% more? And that's obviously only numbers. But like within the leadership team, I think it's uh, having almost like a portfolio and saying, well, this is the turnover that we can do. Certainly, this is maybe we're taking a bit of a more long-term shot, but your structure follows in the end where your strategy lies. And you cannot build an organization without having a business goal and also making these business goals very clear and understandable to the company. So I think it's like this is your starting point, and then you put the organization in a way to achieve these goals.
I think we can be indeed transparent on the fact that in any organization, strategy is one of the pillars where we have to work because, as you say, this is what will drive everything. So that will help you design your organization, and you must spend time on that. The thing is that many organizations fall are kind of have a paralysis syndrome because we all have that very shiny and perfect strategy, and then there is the reality and things that I always try to bring that nuance, saying that your strategy must be proportionate to your ambition and where you are. And it's useless to try to think too much in advance on how big it will be, where you don't even know what you will be doing tomorrow. So it's good that you bring some balance and some nuance on where you are and be honest on how are you able to build a strategy and how far can you go, and then build up on that so that you can build your strategy muscles over time. Okay, Diego, what was the most difficult challenge as a CEO to get the change done? It's probably dealing with me, but it's
Yeah, I mean it's very multiple, right? So I think the thing that you need to get right is the buy-in. I mean, all the content work you can get help. I mean, you can do late night dinners with Timothy, and he helps you to do sparring on like whether this makes sense or this makes sense. But if you run alone and you don't have your team buy-in with you, then I mean, you will not be able to execute the change. So I think you need to make sure that everybody understands why we are doing it, what's in for me as well.
okay. Different altitude here is more related to the customer request because you were explaining a thing that you were going from a things where you were taking any customer request and trying to prioritize them to now being much more opinionated where you go and trying to steer and to be more strategy driven in the decision. But then where do you fit now those customer requests into the process?
Yeah, and I think that's a process question, but then the question is how firm can you be to also stick with your process? And that's again a mindset and strategy question because if you miss out on revenue because you can't do that and there's no alternative, then you need to have the strength to not back down, but like really stay with your product driven roadmap. And there might be sometimes concessions. But as a baseline, and I think you can fine tune that process. This is how we did it over the time. You can build certain thresholds and say, well, you have a customer segmentation, and for customer X, you still do Y. For customer B, you might not do anything anymore. And then in terms of product, I think you need to define X% of your capacity you allocate to product roadmap, and then you basically time box the change requests that you're having from a customer segment. And over time, that should go lower. This is how I would, with the knowledge of today, would like approach that. And I would also like just make sure that the process is in place, and then be a big forgiving if that process hasn't been followed up 100%. But over time, you should make sure that these metrics are being kept.
Well, I think indeed we must be honest on the fact that when a B2B company, when you have customers that weigh significantly into your portfolio, well, you need to take that into account, and you cannot be too rogue on the decision. So what is really important, as you're saying, is having that strategy that set the direction, but then having the process to challenge that strategy, and also being able to surface those feedback and those insights that may confront you into your perception of the reality, because a strategy is still not the reality. And whatever you start thinking about the future, no one is a wizard, and therefore there is always a probability that you are wrong. And in order to find and acknowledging that, you must have a process that helps you to challenge yourself frequently on, is your strategy still the right one, or are these signals that should force you or invite you to revise your approach in order to reach your goal? Because you set a direction, you start building a plan, the plan might be wrong, there might be multiple plans, and every single time that you move forward you receive new input and new insight that help you to confirm whether you're still in the right direction or whether you need to adjust. The thing is that the process is important, because if you don't have that process, that systematism, then you don't learn. Product management and building an organization is basically an empirical process. It's just looking backward. You're trying to learn from the past to take better decisions for tomorrow. In that process, and if you must have that structure so that you can have that empirical process in place, because otherwise you just guess. And some people are really good at, really lucky with their guess. Some people don't. So. Andrea, you're saying in large organization, people prefer to have the product manager as a single point of contact, also for bugs and handling dependencies. Any advice on how to empower the team to handle more of that autonomously? I think that's not much of a problem at UBench. Teams are very because I'll let you answer, but I think the root is mostly on ownership and how you drive them and how they define by themselves what is the impact.
Yeah, and I think, I mean, we wouldn't qualify as large organization yet. So I
Not
think
yet.
it's, yeah, not yet, indeed. I think for us that didn't really apply because people are sitting next to each other. But in general, I think product manager, even though it might not be a formal leadership position, it has leadership elements, and like there's difference between ownership and execution or contribution. And I think it's how the PM will then steer these processes, because I think you can also allocate different tasks to different people, and then you're basically making sure that everybody feels seen or heard. And I think what's happening at our place is obviously also that like support sometimes feels undervalued, and that is something that leadership needs to solve with appreciation per se.
Excellent. Last question from Finian. Would you now define yourself or define you as a product-driven company?
Well, I have that discussion a lot with my CPTO, and I think you can be product driven in enterprise to a certain extent, but you will not ever have a situation where you will not need to adjust your product, and you will not be able to do an fully inbound lead go to market funnel in enterprise sales. But I think we are much more product driven than before, and we do have a roadmap. We are able to deploy new features and functionalities. We are able to upsell. All of that we were not able to do 2-3 years ago. So I think we are very much on the road to there. We will not be a self-service B2C platform that doesn't need a go-to-market team or a sales team. But I think we came a long way since 2 years.
I think it's important to demystify a bit first what do we mean by product driven, because there is the extreme of the wet dream of product-led growth, where your product will be online and in self-serve and it eats by itself, it's grow by itself. These are just the 1% of the application. The large majority of B2B SaaS are enterprise driven, and naturally the relationship that you build with your customers is still at the center. The question is, how can you ensure that you keep your DNA, you keep on drive, and then you steer your organization, your market into the right direction while listening to them? Because there's one thing that you should never forget when you build an application or software, is that you're not the customer, and you will not be the one using your own solution. So ultimately, if you build that for a market, then probably you should listen to them. Then the question is how much you should listen to one customer versus all of them, and what will be the consequence of taking those decisions into the future growth of your organization and its sustainability. And I think that's something that you have entered. And you realize that going from there is always a path where you have nothing and you start building an application and you must listen to customers. And at some point, a lot of ideas are good ideas. Then you realize at some point that you cannot swallow all the ideas that people have, and not all of them have the same impact. And that's where you need to start rethinking the way you approach things, and you must be a bit more opinionated on the direction to take. Well, again, and I think that's really important as a caveat, acknowledge the fact that your opinion ultimately doesn't matter. It's the opinion of the market. And the question is, what is the system you put in place in order to ensure that your decision reflect the market and reflect the largest group of the market, and not the exception that may at short term bring revenue, but at long term be detrimental for your organization. Um, I think we're reaching just the point of the end of this webinar. I think I will cheer ourselves because most of the time we're struggling with time. I think we're just now just perfect on time. I then take advantage of if anyone's have one final question, don't hesitate to drop. In the meantime, I want to extend a huge thank you, Manuel, for coming to this webinar, contributing, and for the collaboration, because I really enjoyed a lot working with you and with your team, because I mean your team is amazing in their passion, their willingness to learn and to contribute, and how well they react when they are challenged and confronted, and how much you can swiftly react and say, "Wow!" But I remembered many of their moment, and from the moment where they had that spark of things, say, "Oh shit, we're not going to the right direction," to the pace to which they were shifting to a different way of working. I think that's remarkable, and we must congratulate for them, because again, in any transformation, I don't do much of the work except being annoying. It's all of you doing the job.
Yeah, you're doing that very well. No. I really enjoyed it also, and obviously, I mean, we were staying in contact, and we also have updates for each other. And I am genuinely proud of, like, especially the culture of our team, because in the end, that is enabling any of the change. And you can change things, but it's harder to change culture. And there's this Peter Drucker quote: "Culture eats strategy for breakfast." So going back to that initial question, what you actually need to take as a route, that's the culture, and then the strategy, and then the execution. And I think, happy to have chats also with either of you individually if there's any more questions. But yeah, it was a pleasure to being here. Thanks, Timothy, for organizing that one.
Thank you, Tim. Thanks, everyone. So this record will be published online, and we'll share that with all of you. But we really appreciate that you spend this time with us, and wish you a wonderful end of afternoon.